Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another Sunday market breakdown. Couple pairs on the watch list. Let's start with the first one. New Zealand dollar versus the US dollar. Starting on the weekly. What can I see on the weekly is that we're currently in a downtrend. When I zoom out a little, you can see that we're trending downwards. Now, when I look purely at the market structure, I can see that this was my low, my high, my low, and my high. So if I draw my fib from the low to the high, I can see that we have this bearish W pattern here. And I can see that previous week and the week before, we received two bullish candle closes, indicating that we're trading in a phase one trade. Now, when I go on the daily, I can see here a nice bullish end pattern, 1, 2, 3, and an indicating candle, indicating that potentially we can already make some relief. So I place my daily zone right here on the first structure. And when I put a line on this structure, I can see on the daily that we have buyers, 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 and here this little tab, also buyers. When I zoom this out on the weekly, I can see some supply and demand. Buyers, strong impulse, buyers, fake out from this zone, also buyers. So I'm waiting for the price to come back to my zone to look for a potential long entry. Now, until which zone can I trade it? Until this weekly bearish W with an IC. 1, 2, 3, fourth leg, potential fifth leg. So this setup is like a double weight setup. First of all, I'm looking for a possible long setup, the bullish M, and then I'm looking at this bearish W aligning with this weekly bearish W. So that's NZD USD. Next one on the watch list is GBP pound NZD. First of all, what can I see is that we have a bullish end pattern, 1, 2, 3. 2 weeks ago and previous week, we received a bearish candle. So again, a phase one trade on a strong supply and demand zone. Sellers, sellers, basically a weekly high. We received two bearish candles. So currently in a phase one trade. What can I see on the daily? I can see a head and shoulder pattern. Shoulder one, the head, shoulder two, with potentially smaller shoulder one, head, and smaller shoulder two. Now, why do I take the smaller shoulder? Because when I draw my fib from the low to the high, I can see that my smaller shoulder is aligning here in our Fibonacci levels. Now, when I take my line and I put it on the first shoulder, I can see on the daily sellers, sellers, sellers. So a strong supply and demand zone for the sellers. And what's also interesting, we can see rejection, support, breakthrough, and now I'm waiting for the retest to look for a setup. I can take this trade up until this weekly bullish M, and here I can look for a long setup. Next one on the watch list is CAD Yen. What can I see on CAD Yen is that we're currently trading at this inverse head and shoulder pattern. Shoulder one, D head, shoulder two. 2 weeks ago, we received liquidity from the zone, and we got an engulfing close forming here a very small inverse head and shoulder pattern, aligning nicely on the daily with our other head and shoulder pattern. Shoulder one, same lows, same head, potentially shoulder two. So waiting for the price to come there. Now, what's also interesting is that yes, on the weekly, we are trading against this weekly zone, but what can I see? The price closed engulfing a weekly small pattern, bullish market structure, bullish trend. And on the daily, what can I also see? Is that we still have impulse correction, impulse correction. This move towards the downside is still more correctively than the impulse coming from the zone. So the bulls here for me are stronger. Now, also very interesting on this zone is that we have buyers, buyers, lots of buyers, buyers, sellers, buyers. So very strong supply and demand zone. Waiting for the zone to be tapped, looking for an entry. Next one on the watch list is AUD Swiss. First of all, what can I see on the weekly? Because this is a pretty interesting one. We're still making higher highs and higher lows. When I draw my fib from the high to the low, high to the low, I can see that our current fib level has been activated. Now, first of all, when I look at the market momentum, I can see we have an impulse correction, and we have an impulse switch of momentum forming here, head and shoulder pattern. Now, what do I expect? That the price comes towards this zone and goes towards the downside, at least until this structure. Now, what we received previous week is an engulfing bullish candle above this supply and demand zone. So basically, what do we get? Switch of momentum, break under the zone, small retest, and a reclaim from the zone. So what am I expecting is that we get a potential retest up until this zone. Now, on the daily, I want to see some confirmation. So what do I see on the daily? I see here a nice bullish M with also an inverse head and shoulder, shoulder one, the head, because these are the same lows. And then 1, 2, 3. But here I see 1, 2, 3. So I'm waiting for the price to come back towards this zone, aligning nicely with this supply and demand zone, to take here the long setup up towards this weekly head and shoulder to take here the short setup. If we manage to go first towards here, I will look for a short setup up until this first structure. So that was AUD Swiss. And the last one on the watch list is AUD NZD. What can I see? It's a phase 2 trade. First of all, we were making higher highs, higher lows, high, low, break of structure, lower low, lower high, draw my fib from the low to the high. What can I see? We have an ABC pullback, 1, 2, 3, went towards the high, engulfing close, and now we have here a close under this zone. So for me, the bears are obviously in power here. We closed under this zone. So phase 2 trade, I can look for daily patterns. What do I see on the daily? I see a nice bearish W. 1, 2, 3. So when I draw my fib from the low to the high, I will mark out my daily first, which is aligning nicely in this golden zone region, in the 61.8 region. I'm going to put a line on this first structure. Oh, what can I see on the weekly? First of all, on the daily, I see sellers, some buyers too, buyers. But when I go to the weekly, I can see that this is almost kind of aligning nicely with this head and shoulder pattern. It's a little bit lower than this head and shoulder pattern, but what can I see here? Sellers, and also buyers. So very interesting supply and demand zone. So waiting for the price to get there and look for an entry. So these are the pairs at the moment on the watch list. I will update you more on Instagram. Good luck this week.